So what is the requirement here? We have purchase order numbers, and we are not sure how many numbers we are going to have, and the purchase order number may change. Right? And what it is saying is, like, we have purchase order numbers displayed, and for each purchase order, we need to capture the ship date, order total, and the state where it is, the buyer is resides. From which application? Procurement Anywhere application. So this is the application, and for this application, we have the username, we have a password. Click on sign. So now what we need to do is, we need to take this purchase order number and we need to put that here. And we got the ship date, and we got the order total. We need to download this spreadsheet. Which means, like, based on the state, who is the agent. So we have an agent name, like for each state, that mapping we have, and which state it is, case. Where is that? Here it is. Who is nothing but Tim Langer. So we need to select Tim Langer. So we need to do the same thing for all the purchase order numbers. So we need to get the purchase order number again. We need to put that here. And we got the value ship date. We need to take the value. And the state is MN. Which matters. So in the similar way, we need to do that for all the purchase order numbers. Let me close this out. Now I don't want to download. I want to skip the download step, which I already have the sheet, right? I'll just put that directly into my application, like my process. So let us start UiPath. Name we will do pragmatic procurement solutions. We will do procurement solutions. We can open our project folder by clicking on this file explorer. So this is my project folder. What I want to do is, I want to take this state assignments, which I downloaded manually, and I'll put that here directly. I just want to skip only that particular step. Okay. And now what we need to do is, first we need to open this page, right? Copy. So we need to use the open browser activity. So this is in the modern design. So we want to go with the class for now. Class. Browser activity. And we can do, I'll go with the Chrome. For now, just I'll keep this as disabled. Now what we will do is we'll use attach browser. Click on the screen. It's done. And we need to click on this procurement anywhere text. So we will identify. And every time whenever we are doing our UI automation site, we just need to cross validate our selector. We just need to check whether the selector is stable or not. The AA name is, in majority of the cases, I always prefer to go with AA name that is available, which means like whatever the text is available on top of that element. So this looks to be fixed for us. Once that is done, we will be navigating to this place. We need to put the username and password and click on sign in. So we will use attach browser again. We need to have to type into active.
So basically, why we are using the attached browser again and again due to some, let's say,
here,
we don't want to lose the focus.
This browser is different and this browser is different, right?
Okay.
For that reason, we are using this attached browser. See, about attached browser, whatever we have here, right? This is specific to the first browser. You see the selector, right? This is, if you see the title, Automation Anywhere Labs Supply Chain Management, which means it is this one. And here it is PO tracking login, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct. Okay.
So both are different attached browsers, different browsers.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll identify email. We need to go for the password. So username and password we have here, right? So inputting in username and password, we need to click on sign in. So now let us check the selectors of each. So here it is saying button. So I want to modify this selector because the buttons can be of 2 to 3, right? So I'll just select the name, which is like we have a sign in. And if you see, right, there is a lot of spaces in between. I don't want to have such a spaces because that may vary. So I'll just put an asterisk here. So I'm just tuning this selector that it can be any number of spaces in between. So do not consider it. And we can have this visible in the text as well. So it's up to us. Have it or a name will be good enough. So it totally depends on us whether we want to take it or not. And we'll click on validate. And we can just unselect this, even that is also fine. So we got the valid selector. Click on save. That is got reflected, and we'll click on OK. And let us check the password as well. See, for everything, ID is input password, which looks to be stable for me. Wherever we are using the interactions, right, your interactions, every time we just need to cross-validate whether our selector is stable or not. So all this looks to be stable enough. So let me just close this out, minimize out, and let me close this application. The opening of this is I'm not executing because I commented it. So clicking on that particular procurement tab and logging into that application should happen. Let me run. See, whenever we are performing some tasks, right, every time we just need to execute our flow just to make sure that it is working as expected. So the login was happening, right? And what I want to do is, along with that, in the properties, I'll just check this simulate clip. Here also, I want to go for simulate. Now, let me see. Let me just log out and close this out. Let me run this script. When we change to simulate also, we will test it, because there might be chances that the simulate may not work for some applications, right? So even if we first we tested with the default, and if we modified it to the simulate, then we should test it again. So login is successful into the both applications. And before we go for it, right, before going for anything else, how can we make sure that this is open? See, we should be aware that like this page is opened or not. As a human, we are seeing it, and we will come to know this page is open. And how are we going to get to know whether the how the robot is going to get to know whether this page is opened or not? For that, we have element exists, because that will return us whether the element is available on the screen or not, right? So when I identify that, we need to just identify some element on the screen which you think that whenever you logged into this application, all the time you will see that element. So you can just select this, or you can select this purchase order tracking. So I'll go over this purchase order tracking. Click on this, and here what I will do is I'll just come here in the target, right? I'll just check out the selector. So I have had H2, but I want to have the name as purchase order tracking, which is working out. Validate, save. Click on OK. And I want to keep wait for ready complete, because robot identified that the element is available, but I want the robot to wait till the application is completely loaded before going for the next actions. And here we can just hit the Control K, and we can say keyword tracking open, and it creates a Boolean variable here for us. And here we can just have if condition. We can have that variable, and if that is available, which means true, nothing to do for it. And in case if that is not true, in that case we doesn't want to continue our execution, right? And for that we can use an activity to raise an error, but till now we didn't discuss that, so I'll just keep it as it is for now. I will not do anything, and whatever the actions we want to perform, that we are going to do in the then. Okay, and else we are not going to have anything, and whatever we want to do, everything we are going to do in the then sequence only, because the page is open, right? And even when we open this also, we need to make sure, right? Here we can have element exists. I'll identify this or this, either of these two. This we will do. And we will check the selector, and we got everything. So what we will do is, in the properties, we'll just put this complete. Control K. Order this application. Procurement app open. So we just need to give some meaningful names, and we can have an if condition here. Or else if. else if the application is open. Then only, if this is true, which means the application is properly open, then only I want to perform the task, right? So I will move everything to inside out. And here also, what I will do is, we'll use the else if only instead of that. If tracking open. So here we are going to do all our actions. You can see the code, right? And everything will be kind of a clumsy code, and it is not a proper organized code. Because first we need to understand the how we can build the functionalities, and then we will think of how we can optimize our code. To look at all those things, right? We have some more time. So in the else condition, right? I want to keep the message box. I want to specify that document application not open. Expand this body. Here also. We do one thing. We are not executing the open application, right? Let me run this flow now. We should get a message box stating that the application is not open. Procurement application not open, which means the application was not available. Let me enable this and let us run this flow now. It opened, and now it is executing as expected. Perfect. Everyone clear about this? Why we are using element exists? Why we are not using find element? Because if you use the find element directly, it is going to throw an error, right? And end of the story, if the application element is not available, then we are happy to receive the error, and it is going to throw an error. Why we are not using find element? Why we are using only element exists? Can anyone think through that? Let me know if you could not able to understand something, or if you are having any doubts, please let me know. Reason why we are not going to use the find element is it will intermediate, like it will throw an error in between your execution, and the element exists will return you whether the element is available or not, and based on that we can take our action. In case if the element is available, we are going to perform the actions. If not, here instead of message box, right, going further, like when we see the exception handlings and debugging and all these things, right, in that we will be discussing about some more activities, and we will be using that activity to throw an error. When we are throwing an error, we will give the correct meaningful message that what is the reason for the failure, and it will give us a clear picture whenever someone is debugging any process, right? So it will give a very clear picture to them to understand it properly, what actually happened. That is the reason for which we use the element exists, not the find element. Clear, guys? Everyone? Shri, Vira. Perfect. So now we need to perform the task. What is the task? We need to get this purchase order number and we need to paste it here. And we need to check whether that purchase order number value is reflected back or not. Because see, if you see, right, if you're changing something from here to there, it is automatically getting reflected. But it may take time. There might be a chance of latency. Here we don't have any latency, but in an enterprise applications, right, there will be a chance of a latency, which means like the slow loading of the process, or it may take time to reflect the data back. So we need to be very careful. We need to wait till the actual data was reflected back. And also there might be a chance that in case if any no record might be possible. So here we may not have, but there might be a chance that we may have some purchase order numbers. It may not have this record. So we need to be careful about it because there might be a possibility. Such possibilities are there. And that will be as part of the discussion requirements. We will be having all these things. So we need to handle this as well. There might be a possibility that there is no record. There is a possibility that we will get a record. So we need to get this. First, we need to get this purchase order number in a loop, one after the other, right? How we can get that? Can anyone help me out with that? See the selectors here. We are getting P1 number 1 as an ID. Okay. Let us select the second one, P1 number 2, which means this number is keep on changing. And let us go to the third one. P1 number 3. Number 4. So what we can do now? To know that there is an increment in the number to identify the purchase order number. So just I'm giving 5 minutes to you everyone, guys. Just think through and let me know the loss. Yeah, we can loop to iterate for each PO, or we can store it in array. Everything will be fine. But when we are looping, right, first we should understand whether the PO number 1 is available or not, PO number 2 is available or not. Because at the end we should be aware that till what number we have, right? Because we are not sure. For now, how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7. In case if you have 6, in case if you have 8, so we don't have any prefixed numbers here, right? So for that, what we will do is will that element exists or not. We will identify it and we'll go to the selector, and we have a PO number 1 which is required, and this is a fixed. The condition is PO number found, and here we will use while loop. While PO number found, we need to get the PO number. To get the pivot number, what we are going to do is get text. Identify. Edit the selector. We have the pivot number. And this is our purchase order number. We can go to the properties and we can just hit Control K. Purchase order number. So now we got the purchase order number to our variable. So we got the purchase order number, but that is only for the number one. And what we need to do is we just need to take a counter variable, pivot counter, and it is of integer. And here we'll go for an assign activity. We'll give the pivot counter to 1. And we will do all the actions what we want to do here. And after that, again, we want to check whether the element exists or not. Because by end of the scenario, we will check whether the next purchase order number is available or not. So to increase the counter, we will take the assign activity here. Pivot counter is equal to pivot counter plus 1, which means initially it is 1, and once we perform all our tasks, we are saying that the pivot counter is 2, and we are checking whether the element is exists for the next pivot counter or not. So to have that, this number needs to be changed, right? So we will select this and we will just right click. We will select this number and we will right click, and here we have an option, use a variable. Click here, and in the drop down you can select pivot counter, confirm, which means now your pivot number plus counter, that is going to be your selector. And in the second time, once we completed our transactions for the first pivot number, we'll check whether the next pivot number is available or not. And here also, in the edit selector, we will change, because initially it is 1, but the second time it will be 2. So we will change it to the pivot counter, confirm, click on OK. See, when we insert the variable, every time we modify the selector, here also you can keep it as 1 or you can use the variable. It is up to us. Here it is coming as a validate, right? We should not click on it. When you are inserting a variable, you should not validate this. In all the other scenarios, we will click on this validate, right? But when we insert a variable, we should not do that. Click on OK. And now we want to see whether we are getting the actual pivot number or not. And for that, we are going to use a log message just to print, and it should have only 7 pivot numbers, and later it should not be available for us. So here we will be writing purchase order number. And every time, right, like here we will be waiting for 30 seconds. The timeout is 30 seconds every time, right? In properties, if you see, your timeout is 30 seconds. The default value is 30 seconds. But the page is already open. We know that it is not going to load again. We can reduce it to 1 second. Because after 7, when you're looking for the 8, it is not available. I don't want to wait for 30 seconds because the page is already loaded. In such scenarios, we can reduce this. So maximum it will wait for only 1 second. And now let us execute this flow and see whether we are getting all the purchase order numbers or not. Let me run this flow.
It means we are using the dynamic timeout instead of the static timeout, right?
See, the timeout is always static only. See, default that is 30 seconds, and now we reduced it to 1 second. So the maximum time we are giving that is 1 second only.
Okay.
The maximum time. In case if that is available, it will go before that. And let us see the output.
Hmm.
So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we got all the 7 purchase order numbers. So in this concept, right, what we covered is how we can check whether the element is available or not, and based on that, how we can take our actions. And also we have seen, like till now, what we have seen in the selectors, like how we can insert the wildcards, or how we can add the tags and remove the tags, or tuning of the selectors. But now in this case, we used the variable also, right? So we can leverage the passing of the selector to be dynamic here. Here the selector is dynamic because whenever having a value in it, that value will place this variable, and this I selector is going to be dynamic for you. Here, hello.
Yes, Parth. Yes.
Now we got the purchase order number. Every time we are getting the purchase order number, but for every purchase order number, we need to type here, and we need to take the ship date and order date, right? Let us go here. Here we will go for attached browser. See here, if you remember, right, here I'm not using the attached browser, but here I'm using the attached browser. The reason is here we are going to perform only one task, and after that we are changing our browser to this. And here we are supposed to do multiple tasks, right? Like we need to go for a type into, and we need to use the get text next. We need to type the purchase order number. And in case if already existing is there, we need to empty, because we doesn't want to append the purchase order numbers to search. Now we need to check whether this purchase order number is available. We need to use element edges. In this selector, what we will do is we will get the name as well, which means we need to check whether the purchase order number is available or not. And we can take the column name, just put the asterisk. And now we will validate, because we are not inserting any variable here. Once here. And now what we need to do is we need to change it to the variable. Use a variable is purchase order number. So for each purchase order number, it will check whether the purchase order number is got reflected here or not once we do the search, right? And now we need to have a variable here. See, all these validations are much more required when you are working in any of the projects, because the validations are the major part to make sure that your process is getting executed as expected. Order found. Again, we'll put a condition. Go with this condition here. Now we are putting a message box. Purchase order found. And in the else, we'll put a message box. Say that purchase order number not found. And here in this, we need to get the text. Get text. What we need to get? We need to get the ship date. To get the order total. We need to get the date. And let us see the selector. Column 7, row 2, which is fixed. Like the column will be always 7th column. And if you doesn't want to keep the column index, you can just take the column name and you can remove the column number. And just put this asterisk. Always remember, if you have multiple spaces, right, try to put the asterisk wildcard instead of spaces, because if the changing of the spaces should not impact your process. 8-2 will go for the column name and we'll remove it. Click on value. Name, we'll remove the column. Now we got all the values. So we need to create the variables for those. Let us create a variable. It is should get. So it will be order total. It will be state. Now we got all the values, whatever we want to have, right? And we need to input the details back into this application, ship date and order total. And agent name, we will be getting it from this state assignments, right? So to get that values, we will read that file before we start with the process. From here we can put, once both the applications are open, we can just put that. Hit range, and we'll select that file. And the sheet name and all these things we need to provide, right? It is sheet 1. Copy. Given the sheet name, and the output of this is DT state agent mapping. We are saying that this is a data table state agent mapping, and which we are going to utilize in the later stage. Where we are going to utilize? Here we are going to utilize to get the agent name based on the state. So for that, we will use the filter data table activity just to filter the value which is corresponding to that particular state. See, the row item is here, right? That is working on row item. Give the column, you need to give the data. Okay. So we will use the filter data table activity. We are going to provide whatever we have written, like we read that, right? And here we need to give your filters. Like what we are going to give, the column which is equal to the value of the state what we got. So here we will give the column name state, and the value is state which we got from that, and the output is state agent data. Okay. Now we know that like we have only one row, so to give the row of this, in order to get the value from there, we'll give dt agent of 0, which means the first row we are passing into this row, and we can select by name or a number. In case if you are giving a number, the index will start from the 0 in UiPath, so this will be 0 and this will be 1. But I always prefer to go with the names, not with the indexes, to avoid any type of changes. Full name, and the value will be into the agent name. will be into the output agent name. So now we should get the agent name as well. And let us do one thing. Before we input that into the application, we will try to print the values and see. Take only the agent name. In case if the agent name is like, if you could able to see properly, then that would be really great. So let me log out and close this. So if you see, right, it waited till the page is completely loaded. Last state is DC, and we'll see for the DC whether we got the correct name on. Oops. You see, right, we are getting the purchase order number. First, we are getting the name, and then we are getting the number. So let us see, where do we have that? Oh, okay, fine. So it is going as expected. It was supposed to be above all this. As soon as we get the purchase order number, we should try to print it, just for the clarification. So we got all the details, right? The state, agent name, and everything. And if you see, right, all these we created inside of this then by hitting a control K, which means your scope will be inside that. Should get. So I want to change everything to the main sequence. I want agent name, not the. So we got the details of each purchase order number. And now we need to input into the other application. So we'll use the attached browser. We will go here, and here we need to input all of our details. We'll indicate on the screen, and we need to use the type into, right? We need to view the order total. And here it's a drop down, right? So we need to use select item. For drop downs, we will be using select item activity. And this is a modern design. We'll come to the modern design again. Select it. So from the drop down, you can select now. You got all the values, but we are having a variable, so we can use the agent name directly here, so that name will be selected. And order total you can have, but if you see the order total, right, here we have a dollar symbol, so it is going to select everything along with the dollar symbol. But here we doesn't require to enter the dollar because it's already available here. So what we can do is dot replace in the double quotes the value which we want to replace and with what we want to replace with nothing, which means now you got that you will get the dollar to be removed in case if it is available. If that is not available, it will not throw any error. If it is available, then only it will replace. And now let us try to execute this. See, right, it is getting appended all the time, which means our flow is not working as expected. Means in all the places we modified our number, but here we didn't. Right click, use pivot counter. The same number, right? All the time. We just need to modify in all of this. Let us do one thing. I don't want to delete manually anything. What I will do is in the properties, right? I'll just check this empty field here also. Now let us run this. We'll just close this out. And now I'll run this. Our execution is completed. Everything is got perfectly executed. We just need to click on submit, but it is going to give you a wrong output. The reason is, if you see here, right, everywhere we have a space. That space needs to be removed. So what we need to do is, here we just need to put dot trim, which means it will remove the spaces. Okay. So we got to know everything is working. So our loop is completed. And now what I want to do is attach browser, close this up. Click on login and use. Once we click on this logout, this may change or may not change. Let us see whether it is changing or not. It got changed. We'll click on repair and we'll just select it. It got updated and the ID exists. We go tracking, right? And in case if it is logged in, what is the value we are going to have? You should not rely on the IDX. I'm just trying to check how the name is changing. Here we got automation anywhere labs, pivot tracking. But if it is logged out, so the labs is missing. So what I can do is I'll just edit this selector. Here, start here. Click on validate. It is not working. It has got validated. Click on OK. Now we can use the close tab. Side of our attached browser, if we use the close tab, that will be closed after logging out. Okay. So let us run this flow now and see everything needs to be inputted and application needs to be closed. Now there is no space. the other browser is got closed. So we just need to click on submit. That is the only pending item we have. We got the 100% accuracy. So we just need to see this pop up now. Close this out. Okay. Let us run this.
But how can we handle unexpected pop-up in the UiPath?
See the unexpected pop-ups in the sense like we should be already aware of this pop-up. So there is nothing that like we
Okay.
can handle any new pop-ups. But if we already know that, then we can do that. So in case if we are coming in between, then that we will consider as a, like a new pop-up enhancement, and we will fix it.
Okay.
So here we got 100% accuracy. So this is how we can automate a process, and hope you guys are a bit clear about this. But in case if you have any doubts, you can always ask me. And let me do one thing. But just try to practice this out, okay? Please do the practice of this for sure. Don't miss out. UiPath. I shared the code with you guys, and if you have any questions, please let me know on this. Do the practice as well. Guys don't have any questions,